I'm David Munro. I'm Surrey's Police and Crime Commissioner. Could I say thank you very much indeed for watching us at this the latest roadshow event. I'm going to start off talking about 5 minutes or so. I'll hand over to Chief Constable Gavin Stevens and then the Mole Valley Borough Commander, Inspector Karen Coyne. And after that will be the important bit, which is your questions and comments, which I promise you will answer as honestly and as in much detail as we can. Before we get started, I'd like to say thank you very much indeed to the vast majority of Surrey residents who've behaved so magnificently in the last year during the coronavirus outbreak. It can't have been easy for an awful lot of you, but I think collectively as a county we've done very well indeed. Surrey Police have been out in the last year encouraging, explaining, educating, and in the last resort enforcing. And for the great majority of residents, that's all that's been needed. I'm afraid a small minority, a very small minority, still don't seem to get it. The literally life and death rules what we must all obey to make our community safe. So I just say that the police will be there to enforce as necessary, but I hope it won't be. Okay. That's me, David Munro, Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey. My overarching job, my primary job, is to hold Surrey Police to account on behalf of you, the residents. And I can only do that properly if I actually know what you're thinking. And that's why this event is so important, but also other events as well. We'd really like to know from you what you think we're doing wrong, what you think we're doing right, and I think we are doing a lot right, and what you think we can improve. I think we've got some considerable achievements under our belt, Surrey Police. For a start, after a decade of some very painful cuts indeed, we're now recruiting like mad. Since last year, there's been well over 100 officers and staff in post. They're not actually out there, all of them, out there in our streets and communities. It takes a long time to recruit and train. But nevertheless, we are on target to meet the promises we made. So thank you very much for providing some of the money for that. I'm glad to say that we seem to have improved the satisfaction amongst Surrey residents. We're now 7th nationally. I'd really like to be number 1, of course, but I hope we're on our way to that. And I'm particularly pleased that our services to victims seems to be going down very well. Being a victim is a rotten place to be. You suffer the original crime, of course, and it also takes far too long to get satisfaction through the courts and so on. And it's crucial we support you during your sometimes painful journey. Before I go on to the precept, I'd just like to say, in summary, what last year's police precept uplift gave us. And in particular, it well over 100 additional officers and staff by March. As I said, they're not all there yet. Some are still in training, but they will be on schedule by the end of this year. So we have are going to achieve the pledge we made. And a lot of those have been at real local level, and I'm sure Inspector Coyne will go into that as it affects Mole Valley in particular. And also, we think that our problem solving, our crime solving rate, it's okay compared nationally, but it can be even better. So a lot of resources are going into that, and the Chief Constable, I know, will want to talk about that. It's a real priority for the police. And it's not just people. We've also done a lot on helping community voluntary organisations to do a lot there. So this is the deal. The government have allowed us to increase the council tax precept by 5.5%. That's equivalent to £15 a year on average Band D property. That's my recommendation, that we pay just a little bit more, all of us council taxpayers, and we think that we know that will allow us to recruit even more police officers and staff. And that's in addition to the national uplift, Boris's 20,000, and that will be on track for next year as well. So in a nutshell, that is what the precept uplift will give you, but my consultation papers is going into much more detail on that. Consultation is running on this. Really want to know what you think about that, and they're the details of how to respond. So I'd now like to hand over to Gavin Stevens, Chief Constable of Surrey Police.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Well, what a year we've had across the county, but even in these times of uncertainty, I believe that it's still really important to plan ahead. If you came along to one of these events last year, you gave us a clear view as to what you wanted from Surrey Police and the service that you expected. And in the early part of the year before the pandemic, I also consulted with officers and staff and volunteers from right across the organisation to seek their views too. And of course, then the pandemic hit and the plans went on hold for a little while. But over the summer, we re-engaged with all of the partner organisations that we work with across the county, and in September launched a new set of commitments to you as our communities, to the future of the force and to each other. I want to talk in more detail about that, and of course I'll keep you updated on it. In fact, we did our first quarterly review at the end of last year and published an update on that in January. So if you've not seen that, then please do look back at our social media feeds where you'll see me give the first quarterly update. But before we get into the detail, I must pay a huge and heartfelt tribute to all of the community effort, the efforts of officers, staff and volunteers that have helped us police the pandemic. We've done everything humanly possible to try and keep you safe throughout this time. And of course, much of the media focus on policing the pandemic has been about enforcement and issuing of fixed penalty notices. But those of us in policing know that that is a tiny, tiny fraction of what we've been involved with. Our efforts are many. We're a really important partner in the work of the Local Resilience Forum for the county when we come together with all other agencies to manage the major incident response. Our police and community support officers and neighbourhood teams have visited many thousands of vulnerable residents across the county. Our police cadets have prepared food parcels for the vulnerable. We had officers come out of retirement to do difficult work on logistics and resourcing planning, on supply of personal protective equipment to over 900 different organisations across the county, and of course, sadly, do the difficult work of supporting the many hundreds of families that have been bereaved as a consequence of the pandemic. I'm enormously proud of what Surrey Police has done, and I'm enormously grateful for your support too. We did a survey in the first wave of the lockdown to check your feelings on how we were responding, and 92% of you said that you had confidence at that time in the work of your local policing team, and we're really grateful for that support. So turning to the commitments specifically then, and first of all, probably the most important set of commitments, those that we are making to you in our communities. You'll know that my outlook is one about preventing crime first and foremost, and I'm pleased to say that our hard work is really paying off in that area. We're currently the 6th safest county in England and Wales and the safest county in the southeast of England. Now, that's no small achievement considering that we have a significant border with the capital, Europe's busiest motorway network and proximity to 2 major international airports. So I'm ever so grateful for the hard work of the teams that keep crime levels low for us all to enjoy. Now, we have great responsibilities to protect our communities too, and sometimes that work is unseen or not really noticed by people. Just one small example of that is the work that we've done on Operation Signature, which tackles romance fraud. Sadly, there were 27 victims of that year with total financial losses of over £280,000. So an example of the sort of offending that we deal with sometimes behind the scenes, but of course can have a devastating impact on the victims involved. Of course, we always work hard to pursue offenders. A few examples of this, I'd start with Operation Centurion, the work to tackle County Line's drug supply. We do that together with colleagues in the Metropolitan Police and other police services across England and Wales, where through detailed investigation and analysis of communications work, we take out the dealership at source and on the streets of Surrey at the same time, reducing the harm caused by drugs in your communities. On our roads, we've had Operation Tramline, which gives us a HGV-eye view of dangerous driving. The teams have dealt with over 305 dangerous motorists, keeping the roads safe for you and your loved ones. And more recently, Operation Rally, work that we've done together with British Transport Police to tackle those offenders that through their theft and damage blight our county, whether that's theft of scrap metal and catalytic converters, or theft of valuable metals from our beautiful buildings across Surrey, or dumping materials in the road. On that operation, we stopped over 150 suspicious vehicles and dealt with 31 offences, including offences of licensing and immigration crime. So much to be proud of, but of course there's more we can do. And our focus for this year is to solve more crime. If you're a victim of crime in Surrey, your chances of having that crime solved are not high enough, and we want to do better for you on that. Turning next to the commitments that we've made to each other inside the organisation. Of course, we aspire to the highest professional standards, and that sometimes means dealing with the things that all organisations of any size can face. So we've made a statement to be part of a project on everyday sexism, tackling the discrimination that female colleagues can sometimes face in the workplace. We held an online debate to allow people to engage in that topic, and it started a campaign called Not in My Force to send a really clear message about the standards we expect in the workplace. Of course, there's lots to be proud of too, and we celebrated Black History Month, welcoming back to Surrey the first black officer for Surrey, Dr. Victor Elisa. And the online debate that Vic took part in was attended by colleagues from police services around the country, and we were really pleased to welcome Vic back to be part of that. The exhibition that was put together went out to communities too, so that you could engage and be involved in that part of our history. And of course, this is just a small part of us wanting to be a truly inclusive organisation, one that truly represents the communities that we serve, where you can see yourselves in us. And of course, this year we welcomed lots of officers to the force. 268 new officers joined us, and on a day in October we swore in 75 new colleagues on the same day. We've never seen anything of that scale in Surrey before. And if that wasn't enough, we also welcomed 33 transferees, some of whom were returning to Surrey having tried out policing elsewhere, 56 police community support officers and 301 police staff colleagues. So our recruitment and training teams have been exceptionally busy over the course of the last year. So our focus in this area for the coming year is to really maintain those exceptionally high standards of selection, of recruitment, of training, of behaviour in the workplace, to make sure that we have the skills necessary to do everything that we can to keep you safe. So finally, turning to the commitments that we've made for the future of the force. I've spoken about prevention. What that means in reality is that our central problem-solving unit overseeing 350 or so live cases. So that's work that officers are doing in their local community to get to the root causes of crime and disorder issues, to design out crime at source and keep our crime levels low. We've done much more in partnership this year as a consequence of the pandemic, and we've forged some really strong new partnerships, and I'm determined that they endure beyond the pandemic, so that that benefit of working together gives you really good quality service when we're all on the other side of this. And finally, one of my responsibilities as chief is to get the full potential from the organisation. Now, that's not just making it a great place to work for all of our colleagues so that they can acquire new skills, enjoy their work and give a great service, but it's also about our use of information and technology too. And this year we've introduced a new body-worn video system, a new online platform for managing all of our digital evidence, where you can directly upload material that you may have to help us in our investigations. And we've also introduced a Digital 101 service 24/7, 365 days a year. You can contact us online and get the same high quality service that you would if you called us on the telephone. Of course, as in the other areas, the more we can do, and this year our focus will be really to understand the nature of the policing demand by getting the best of all the information that we hold to make sure that the new investment and the new officers, staff and volunteers that we're recruiting go to the right places so we keep you safe in your neighbourhoods. So turning now to a local perspective, it's my real pleasure to introduce Inspector Karen Coyne, who's the Borough Commander for Mole Valley.
Good evening, I'm Karen Coyne, and as Mr Stevens has said, I'm the Borough Commander for Mole Valley. This makes me responsible for overseeing all the policing in Mole Valley. I'm going to talk to you about how we police Mole Valley and what our priorities are for the coming year. In Mole Valley, we've got two main uniform teams that are based around the Dorking Pitbrook offices. The Neighbourhood Policing Team, who provide the 24/7 response, they respond to incidents and they also investigate the volume crime. We've also got the Safer Neighbourhood team, which I'm a part of. They focus on local communities and work with the external partners to solve problems. The SNT consists of me, 2 sergeants, who are broadly split between the north and the south, 6 PCs, which is an increase from last year. So this time last year we had 2 officers and 1 police graduate. This year we've now got 4 neighbourhood officers that are specialists. We've got 2 graduates and there soon will be 3 graduates on the team. They're part of the Police Now team, so we benefit from them coming to us with some enhanced training in problem solving. And the idea is that they will have more creative solutions to our problems. We've also still got 10 PCSOs. We've had some staff turnover there, but we've still got a good percentage of the team that's been around for many years, and they'll be familiar faces to you. We've also got 2 youth engagement officers. Again, this is a part of the team that has increased in size. So this time last year we had 1, we've now got 2. We're really fortunate that our new officer used to be a youth PCSO, so he came to us with a lot of experience from the past. That team's also supported by the Designing Out crime officer. He's available, his services are free of charge, and he can offer advice on any aspect of crime prevention. He aims to contact every single victim of burglary to offer them advice and can also help their neighbours if they're concerned they may fall victims of crime. We also have an ASB advisor. She looks at our problems and offers advice on what sort of interventions we can use to prevent those problems happening in the future. And we have a licensing enforcement officer. In the past year, obviously, licensing premises have had a lot of restrictions. Our officers worked alongside her council counterparts, and they've done all they can to support pubs to make sure they can run their businesses to some extent, but safely and within the restrictions. Those are our uniform resources, and they work alongside the proactive and investigation teams that are divisional resource. And we also have help from specialist resources like roads policing, the arms response teams, and the dog units when we need them. Right, so our priorities at the moment are to prevent and detect violent offences, and I'll give you some examples on the next slide. To prevent burglary, to address drugs and county lines offences. Unfortunately, Mole Valley has often suffered over the years from drug dealers coming to our area, so the team looked to gather intelligence to help the proactive resources, which we have a lot of help from our Operation Viking team. And to identify and support those that have been affected by the ASB that's linked to drugs or have been cuckooed, which I'll go into on the next slide. ASB and antisocial driving is also the bread and butter of a neighbourhood team. And again, I'll give you some more examples of that. And as just been discussed, COVID has really affected the area. We're looking at all we can do to support and protect the communities. So those priorities all run alongside the Force's vision of protecting, pursuing and preventing. So some examples of things we've been working on this year. Operation Holly is the team's response to a series of violent offences in the northern part of Mole Valley. Unfortunately, there were several incidents that involved weapons and serious injuries. Fortunately, we realised that there was a link between the victims and the offenders. All bar one were known to each other, and we identified that they linked to ongoing feuds. So the team set about gathering a better picture of what had been going on, who knew who and why it was happening. We also looked at where the offences had been happening. Several of them had been happening in open spaces, parks or recreation grounds. So using our support from our dog colleagues, we've done weapon sweeps of those areas and drug sweeps of those areas. We've also looked at engaging with the younger people that have been involved on the periphery of the problem and looked at what information we could get out of them and how we can protect them from getting involved in the future. We think that a lot of that had been linked to drugs, which takes me on to the next example. As I mentioned, cuckooing is quite a problem. This can range from young people. We had one male who had some vulnerabilities. He had young people going to his flat. They were going there to smoke drugs and to hang out in his flat. He didn't really want them there. It was reported to us by a partner, a housing officer. We then worked with the man and helped him. He now no longer has visitors. His flat's been cleaned up, and it's not appealing to the young people to go there anymore. We also had a more severe case of cuckooing, where a lady who'd been a drug user for many years, she had drug dealers come into her flat. They'd come from out of the area. They came, they used her flat to deal for an hour or so and then left. She had agreed to this, but not necessarily willingly due to her own vulnerabilities. The team worked with her. They've got a partial closure on her premises, and that meant that other than named people on the order, nobody could come into the flat. This stopped the drug dealers coming and really improved the lady's life. Antisocial driving has been a huge issue for Mole Valley. The area has always been popular for motorbikers and also noisy vehicles. So the A24 and the A25 are routes that have been used by people who are coming there to go and drive their cars, have a bit of fun. Unfortunately, that fun really affects on the residents who live close to the A24 and close to the A25. Levels of noise during the summer when they want to enjoy their homes and their gardens have been unbearable for them. Last summer, the PCC supported us with some funding. We were able to use that to get extra patrols, supported by our roads policing colleagues. We've done far more patrolling over the last summer than we have ever done before. There were in excess of 300 stops over several weekends. Over 90 fixed penalty notices were issued, several vehicles were seized, and in addition to that, lots of people were given words of advice or warnings, which if they repeat the offence could lead to their vehicle being seized. Unfortunately, we can't maintain that every summer or even through the winter months. So we're now looking at ways of dealing with that so that it's not a recurring problem. One thing we're doing at the moment is working with looking at what the Borough of Kensington and Chelsea have done. And we're looking at the use of static noise recording cameras, a bit like a speed camera, but used to record the noise and then to issue a penalty notice. So that's something that we hope to update you in the next year. And as we've said, COVID has affected our communities. Mole Valley is very lucky. It's got a lot of active community groups who've done some great work around food banks and helping the vulnerable. We've also worked with Highways and with the National Trust at places like Box Hill. Due to the lockdown syndrome of being bored, people have been flocking to the area in great numbers. The community that live in the villages around there, that's not only caused them congestion, it's also worried them that there's been littering and they're worried about the levels of social distancing. So we've been working with the National Trust, Highways, the council, etc., to see what we can do to support those communities. And again, you'll see that all of those things have protect, pursue and prevent running through them. So I hope that's been a good example of some of the things we've been doing this year.
Thank you very much indeed, Karen. And now it's your chance to ask us any questions or make any comments you wish. Hello, I'm David Munro, Surrey's Police and Crime Commissioner. You just heard 3 presentations which were done a few days ago, but it's the same team now live. There's me, there's Gavin Stevens, the Mole Valley Chief Constable, and Borough Commander for Mole Valley is Karen Coyne. I should have said Gavin Stevens, of course, is Surrey Chief Constable. He's in charge of the whole of Surrey Police. Lots of questions coming in already. The first one I'll take. How's the proposed move of Surrey Police Headquarters to Leatherhead going? I should say I'm speaking from Mount Brown, which is in Guildford, a great place, but it's very expensive to run and not in the right place. We need to be more in the centre of the county. So we're moving to Guildford and we aim to open up a headquarters there in April 2024. Not for a few years, though. We will be going out with much greater detail, especially to Leatherhead residents, to tell them what we're up to. And of course, the new building will require planning permission, and any comments on that, of course, can be done then. So I promise you we'll be consulting very heavily indeed, especially on the planning aspects. Chief Constable, is there anything you'd like to add on our move to Leatherhead?
Well, other than to say that it's a really exciting time for the force. We're very proud of our history, but we have to invest for the future, for what's to come for the next 50 or so years. We're really pleased to move to Mole Valley, and it signals a new way of working too. So, and we look forward to involving local communities as the project develops.
Great. Question 2, completely different. Somebody's mentioned crimes of fraud, burglary, and these new electric scooters. How can communities actually help the police in reducing those crimes and preventing them in the first place? And thank you very much for the spirit behind that question. And I know the Chief Constable will say that the force relies heavily on working with the community in actually fighting crime. Over to you, Chief, and then a local perspective to Karen Coyne.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, if I pick up the online and fraud issues first, probably the best thing that you can do is to go to a search engine and type "Get Safe Online." That will take you to a website with lots of great resources on there, how to spot scams and different types of fraud. It is prevalent, often comes from overseas, so it's difficult for us from an investigative point of view. But with a few handy hints and tips, you can learn how to spot it and make yourself more secure online. So I definitely recommend that. I'll hand over to Karen in a minute on the sort of scooters and burglary issues. But just a couple of things to say from a force perspective is that we're really reliant on information and intelligence from communities on these issues. So I know sometimes people feel nervous about reporting issues to us. Would the police want to know? We absolutely do. So please do let us know on 101 or on our online reporting systems, which are available 24/7, 365 days a year, because that helps us deal with the particular hotspots. But maybe Karen can give a local perspective on that.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of great groups in Mole Valley. So we've got things like Active in Ashtead, lots of neighbourhood watches, Brockham Emergency Response Team. They will all share information that we put out through In the Know. So feel free to then share that on further. So the whole warning is better than actually have to be taken by surprise. Crime prevention is the other thing. Cocooning is something that we recommend for looking out for your neighbours in terms of burglary. So look out around yourselves. Is there an elderly resident that needs extra support, etc.? And generally report it. There's no such thing as a silly report if you're telling us about something that you think is suspicious, and we're happy to assess it and come out if we need to.
Thank you very much indeed, Karen, and thank you again for the spirit behind that question. Now, question 3. Have the police increased the number of police officers and staff from the last year's small rise in the council tax, and have crime figures reduced? Well, I can answer the first part. Yes, we have, substantially. More officers, more staff. They're not all there. They're not all out there yet because they have to be recruited and then trained. And our training wing here at Mount Brown is absolutely bursting at the seams with some really, really high-grade recruits. And they will be out. Some are already out in the streets in our communities, and there'll be more to come. And that's not the end of it. There'll be more recruiting next year as well, as my presentation showed at the beginning of this session. Chief, how's crime doing?
Well, crime is down as well. So as I said in the introductory presentation, we're one of the safest areas in England and Wales and the safest county in the southeast. Crime levels have gone down by over 5,400 offence reports in the last year. Now, of course, the pandemic has definitely had a bearing on that. Many of us have been at home for a prolonged period of time, but a big reduction in crime there. That's not true of all categories. So we've seen an increase, for example, in violence without injury. So offences of harassment, for example, which might take place online or between neighbours. So I know there's been a great community spirit for the most part through the pandemic, but of course it has frayed tempers, and we've seen that in some of the reporting on harassment and violence without injury, which has increased, but generally crime levels down.
That's great. And Karen, what about the Mole Valley position?
Well, as we've covered in the presentation, the team's almost doubled in size, which has been fantastic. We've been particularly lucky with our burglary figures. They're down across the force anyway, but Mole Valley for some reason is extra low. but crime types have changed a little. So although it's lower, acquisitive crime has really gone up. Catalytic converter theft. So if you see somebody under a vehicle, don't assume it's a fault. It could be that they're stealing the catalytic converter. So theft in general is probably our main issue at the moment.
Good, thank you very much. So question 4, unauthorised encampments. Which cause a lot of problems in the summer season especially. What are Surrey Police's plans to reduce the adverse effect of them? And what about this new law which is being proposed to make trespass in some way a criminal offence? I'll take the last bit, it's a political one, and then over to the Chief Constable for the first bit. This new law follows from the consultation which the government did last year, which was asking everybody's opinion. Do we need a stronger legal framework to deal with the minority of unauthorised encampments which do cause trouble? I think we're going to have to wait a little time. It's got to go through Parliament, and I haven't even seen the draft bill yet. I support the move, but I think it will have some interesting side effects as well. Don't hold your breath. Let's see what Parliament makes of it. And Surrey Police's plans to deal with the upcoming season.
Yeah, well, specifically in relation to the derby, which the questioner was asking, I think it's far from clear yet exactly what will go ahead there and what will be permitted at that sporting event. Ordinarily with the derby, we do have a temporary site to move travellers to in the build-up to it. Of course, a number of local authorities in the last year have had injunctions in place to prevent stopping, and we are in active negotiations on a transit site. The picture in general about unauthorised encampments has improved over the course of last year. Again, the pandemic has had an effect on that, but also improved intelligence sharing between the different agencies involved. And the other thing to point out is, although we get over 100 unauthorised encampments each year, it's a small number. Less than 10 groups that cause persistent and difficult problems, and it's those groups where the new legislation can potentially help us and where we need to take enforcement action. So we'll be monitoring it very, very closely in our planning.
Thank you very, very much. Karen, is there anything you want to add from a local perspective?
No, we haven't got the type of injunction from Mole Valley District Council at the moment. They have considered it and they do constantly review that decision. But yeah, every time we have an encampment, we work closely with the landowner and see how we can support them and monitor whether we need to use police powers.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Now, the questioner says 53,000 Crown Court cases nationally are in a queue. There's been severe delays to the criminal justice system because of the pandemic. What's the position in Surrey and what's the impact? Well, in a sentence, it's a very severe impact because there are very bad delays, not as much as there are in many other places, but nevertheless, the situation is not nearly as good as we'd want to. Chief, can you put some detail on that?
Yeah, I can, and thanks. It's a really good question, and of course, we always want to see victims of crime get justice, and for suspects in those cases, people charged, of course, to have the case properly examined. In Surrey, I've just looked up the figures, and these are from about 10 days ago, so they may have changed recently, but we had 202 cases that were awaiting first hearing, and we do know that some trials now are being listed into 2022, so the delays are significant and very worrying. I mean, the reassurance I can give is that we work very closely with the Crown Prosecution Service colleagues and with our court system. The delays in our magistrates' court are not as bad, and they're getting through the casework there. But I agree, the Crown Court is worrying, and I know that nationally different schemes are being looking at that might speed up this justice. But of course, we've got to be careful that it's still safe justice as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. It's one of my big worries, these delays in the criminal justice system. We're letting down victims and indeed some perpetrators. Was they're going to be found not guilty at the end, and they're on tenterhooks. These innocent people are on tenterhooks. And myself and my Police and Crime Commissioner colleagues have been making really strong representations to government to get the criminal justice system moving again. Now, speed limits. A councillor says, why aren't we enforcing speed limits so much as he and many other people want us to do, and what are our plans for the future? Karen, could I ask you to give a local perspective, and then I'm sure Chief Constable will want to say on the policy side.
Yeah, we do. We've got a number of sites that are particularly enforced. We can't, it's a question of resources. We can't enforce every single speed limit, unfortunately, but they are decided according to the number of accidents that have happened there, and it's done according to ongoing risk. We've got a casualty reduction officer. He does a number of enforcement patrols and speed checks. We've also got some PCSOs that are trained up to do it, and a few of the community speed watch groups are still very much live during COVID. So it does happen, but we can't do every single road, unfortunately.
And Chief, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the fatal 5 factors. Speeding is, of course, one of those, and deploy different tactics. So, you know, Karen described in the introduction some of the things that they've been trying at Mole Valley. In my introduction, I mentioned some of the tactics we've been using on the motorway to spot dangerous driving too. So we want to keep the roads as safe as we possibly can for us and our loved ones and across Surrey. So please do keep reporting in those concerns. And as Karen says, the local casualty reduction officer will help them in deciding where to prioritise their time.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'm pleased to say that if the people agree with the increased precept that I'm proposing, and I gave the details in my presentation, part of the increase will include more people in the road policing unit to be able to crack down on dangerous driving, speeding and so on. So there's a bit of light at the end of that tunnel, I'm glad to say. Now, online scams. I'm afraid it's a blight on modern life. What are the police doing about it? I think, Chief, this is up to you again, isn't it?
Yeah, I covered it earlier, but I would encourage people to search for that Get Safe Online website. Lots of resources there. The big push on this is the preventative and awareness one, really. We do get cases where we can investigate if they're local cases, which, you know, for example, Facebook Marketplace or eBay type frauds where it might be a local offender. But often the online scams are industrial scams. They're done at great volume with phishing emails and so on that are generated from overseas. So Action Fraud nationally do collate those and do intelligence work and work with overseas agencies to close down some of these places. I'm aware of a case where it was originating out in a basement in Barcelona where the outfit was shut down. So we do that sort of activity, but of course the best thing we can do is for all of us to be aware and be able to spot the signs of what a scam is. So check out that Get Safe Online. On there you'll also see a little leaflet which you can get, which I think is called The Little Book of Big Scams.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Now for a question on antisocial behaviour. The local neighbourhood watch coordinator in Pixon is worried about antisocial behaviour in his area, especially with some young people starting fires, smoking cannabis, breaking bottles. Karen, what can we do about that?
I saw a report about this yesterday, yeah, and the officers did attend yesterday evening and they did give warnings to 4 people they found there. This is something that we'll be very much addressing with our ASB car, which is a new initiative that we're launching in February. So on top of the usual patrols that the team do, our aim is to have 2 officers on double crew patrols every evening, and they will go around to ASB hotspots and places where reports come in that evening. And our hope is that by doing that as a neighbourhood team, we'll be able to give a better response, because the response teams obviously have to go to grade 1s and prioritise jobs and sometimes can't get to the ASB. So ideally, we'll be able to cover those calls soon. And that's something we're doing with our extra resources.
Thank you. Could I take this opportunity of thanking everybody in Neighbourhood Watch, since that question came from a coordinator. You do a great job. We rely on you crucially, and it's a really good example of community partnership, actually, to crack down on crime and prevent it. So many thanks to NHW. Now, question 9. Like to ask us opinions on what plans are being considered to offer increased local policing. And the questioner says by doing that would rekindle the once localised preventative approach and make neighbourhoods more secure. Well, 3 cheers for that. You're absolutely right. I'm very pleased to say that we're going to help you. We've increased the number of police in Mole Valley, as Karen said before, substantially this year, and there is more to come. And not just Boris's 20,000, we'll get our fair share of those, but also the extra numbers of officers and staff are directly paid through your council tax, and their money will be very well spent. Chief and Karen, any comments on the detail of that?
Well, just to support the questioner, really, the ethos of Surrey Police is a local preventative approach. So we want to invest as much as we can in the local teams. And Karen mentioned earlier how much her team has grown in the last year, and we still have colleagues in training too. So they'll be coming out on the streets over the coming months.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm just getting a note here. There's quite a lot of questions coming in, so I'd ask people to be patient. We'll get through them as quickly as we can. And question 10, a question on closed circuit television, CCTV in Mole Valley. What's the state of play there? Can anyone answer that just off the cuff there?
I don't know exactly how many cameras we've got, but it's very good coverage around the town centres and most of the recreation grounds, Meadowbank Park, for example. I think the number isn't going to go up. However, we've also benefited in recent years from better coverage from shops, from people's dash cams, and from people whipping out their mobile phones when something happens. So the CCTV is pretty good, but we've also got other measures these days. Okay.
Thank you. I think we'll get the questioner, if we can, and a more detailed answer there. It is quite a complicated subject, so if we can identify who asked that question, we'll put something out in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I've got details of where all the cameras are if they wanted to know.
That's great. Thank you. Now, question 11. Another one on antisocial behaviour, this time in the Ashted Recreation Ground. And please, can this area be targeted? Karen, I'm sure it's on your radar anyway, but what are the police doing about that?
Yep, certainly. It's an area that comes up from time to time. It was unfortunately one of the areas where there was a violent offence last summer, and it will very much be part of the patrols that we're starting with our new ASB car. If someone's got a specific concern about it with a bit more information, feel free to get in touch afterwards.
Yes, please do. Yeah. Now, I'm a resident of Pixham Lane. Drivers enter the lane from the A24 and don't reduce their speed. There was a speed-activated slowdown sign there previously, and could we reintroduce that? I'm not expecting you to say yes or no, but can we assure the questioner that we'll take a look at it?
Yeah, I think that's overseen by the county council. I'm not sure, but I'll find out. Okay,
so we will take that on board. Thank you very much. And question 13, Community Speed Watch, that great initiative where volunteers are out there in all weathers to identify who's actually speeding. And have we have we considered introducing Community Speedwatch in Mole Valley? Well, the answer is yes. There is already Community Speedwatch. We are always keen to expand that. And so if anybody would like more information on Community Speedwatch, please get in touch and we will do our best to help. We rely on Community Speedwatch. They're a crucial part of traffic speeding enforcement, and we're very keen to encourage that as well.
Karen, did you want to give details of any local coordinator? Or?
I don't know exactly. There's quite a few speed watches in Mole Valley, and I know I got a request the other day from one that wanted to train up some extra members. I forwarded that on, and apparently even in COVID, we're going to try and find ways to do that training. So we can still increase the numbers even under the restrictions we've got at the moment.
Thank you very much. Now, somebody says, I'm interested in the excessive noise recorders for traffic you use. I know Surrey Police bought some equipment recently. The question is in the Mickleham area, and he says the motorbikes whose silencers have been illegally removed cause immense disturbance. I know that Surrey Police have done a lot of enforcement and monitoring there over the summer. Karen, are you the right person to give more details on that?
Yes, so I think there's two devices that our roads policing unit and our casualty reduction officers are able to use, and they can use them during stop checks. And then the other thing we're looking at the moment is to have static cameras, a bit like the speed cameras. We're in meetings at the moment and looking at costing options for those, but that's more of a long-term solution. But yeah, there are the mobile devices in use now.
And those devices were paid for by myself,
by you.
or rather by council taxpayers. I don't have any money myself. It's the money coming from residents, but a small amount of money, and I think very well spent. And it's an example of how good it is that residents actually come up and report to me, report to the police the specific problems. And in this instance, we've actually been able to do something about it, thank goodness. Now, two questions on quad bikes. Local bridleways and wide footpaths are getting cut up from quad bikes, etc. Makes it dangerous to walk and ride. Who and how is the fastest way to report this? Chief, can we generalise it? How do you like getting reports?
Well, there's a number of different ways, whichever's most convenient for the person asking the question, but you can call us on 101. Typically, you'll get an answer on our non-emergency 101 number within a few minutes. If you don't want to wait a few minutes, you can do it through our online reporting system, which you can do 24/7 at your convenience. We do have some officers that are dedicated to rural issues like this, and will monitor them. And I know Karen's got Police Community Support Officer that takes a particular interest in it as well. So I don't know whether you want to give a local perspective, Karen.
And Karen, just before you speak, I've got a question. There's a particular issue in Norbury Park and the Mickleham Downs.
Okay, I will check whether the team are aware of those. They probably are. So, as the Chief just said, we've got a rural specialist PCSO. Also, being a very rural area, we've got a rural specialist PC. So she guides the rest of the team on what he's doing. We've also got two off-road vehicles, the Ford Rangers, that we can use to go down the very narrow, very bumpy tracks looking for these people. And if we spot a pattern, we can request RPU who've got access to the scrambler bikes as well. But we do realise this really affects our rural community. Sometimes it links into poaching, etc. as well. So we are happy to respond to that when we get the calls.
Thank you very much. Now, what's the advice of Surrey Police of whether leaflets or magazines such as the local monthly parish magazines can be delivered? Chief, I know you've given some thought to this and got some rulings nationally. What do you say to people who want to deliver these kind of magazines?
Well, the simple answer is please don't. I've had lots of questions on this. There's been different views and different advice gone out from different organising bodies, but we've had legal advice on it at a national level. It's not permitted within the regulations. So as we know, the advice for all of us at the moment is to stay at home unless you have a lawful excuse for leaving home, and delivering parish magazines and leaflets door to door is not a lawful excuse. And I guess if we think logically about that, we're being asked to behave as if we've got the virus, and if you had the virus, you wouldn't go door to door delivering things through people's letterboxes. So I know that's tough. I know it's an inconvenience. I know people are missing out on some information, but really we're not through this pandemic yet. I chaired the county coordinating group at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and of course we've seen the terrible loss of life that the nations have endured, and we really do need to stick with the rules and not do that sort of activity.
Good. And on the political side, I've been getting several complaints, mention no names at all, about party political leaflets being delivered as well. And naturally, that applies to them. Please don't do it. It's literally a matter of life and death. Now, in rural areas, residents are very anxious about crime during the COVID pandemic, of course, with many people isolated in their own homes and worried about break-ins. Can you advise us how we can reassure our residents? Chief, for you, and then Karen. I know you've been doing a lot of reassurance personally.
Yeah, well, the first thing to say, as I said at the beginning of the session, is that crime is down, and from a burglary point of view, that is down significantly across the county, and even more so in Moore Valley. But nevertheless, it's an anxious time for many, isn't it, when we're stuck at home, when you can't have that sort of direct contact with people. We are here for you, and we do have additional patrols too. We got some extra money from the Home Office for additional COVID patrols. So never hesitate to call in any concerns, but I would ask, please don't worry too much about burglaries and break-ins, because we have seen significant reductions during the pandemic. But Karen may want to say a little bit about the local perspective on that.
Yeah, as you say, our figures have been very low. The problem has sort of moved to the non-dwelling, well, it's classed as a dwelling burglary, but to sheds and outbuildings. So just make sure they're secure. And if anyone wants advice on crime reduction and protecting their properties, just get in touch with us, because our designing out crime officer is happy to get in touch with everyone and offer free advice about that.
Yeah. But it's so understandable, cooped up in your own home during lockdown, fears can be exaggerated, but you're a phone call away from help and reassurance from Surrey Police. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, cyclists, is it possible to stop cyclists using the main carriageways on the A24 Leatherhead to Dorking dual carriageway and make them use the cycle tracks instead? Chief, is that one of you in a national perspective, and then Karen.
Well, legally they're permitted to use both, but I know that the provision of cycleways actually helps keep both safe. I don't know whether this has been a particular issue on the A24, Karen, that you get reports about.
Yep, we get complaints about the cyclists, and the cyclists complain about the cars as well, unfortunately. As you say, there's nothing that legally means they can't use the road. So no, unfortunately we can't. We do run campaigns though, like Operation Safe Pass, I think it's called, where we will look for examples of people not giving them enough space and use that for education, and vice versa, give the cyclists advice when necessary.
Thank you. I have to say, as a cyclist myself, I don't think I've been down the A24, so my conscience is clear. I get very fed up seeing a perfectly well-constructed cycle track, but it's filthy. It's got twigs, leaves, goodness knows what, and it's overgrown. So, Highways Authority, could you please maintain cycle tracks to the same extent as you maintain the roads? And that means more cyclists, such as myself, would actually use them. Right, that's my rant over. Now, any positive updates in the recruitment process? Well, yes, indeed. We've already said it once, but let's say it again. More police, more staff, they're coming your way. Chief.
Yeah, well, and in my introduction, I mentioned the numbers up until November, I think it was 268 new recruits that we've brought into the force. Of course, that's not just the growth. We've got to account for normal retirements and so on. On top of that, since we did that update, I welcomed 54 new colleagues earlier this month, and then we have another intake in March. So it's a great time to be joining policing, and really pleased that Mole Valley and other areas of the county will be seeing those new colleagues out on the street soon.
Okay, and really high quality entrance. I'm just astounded at how keen, enthusiastic and knowledgeable they are, and they'll play their part very shortly. Now, a Brexit question. No, I'll leave the Brexit question because I missed question 21. I'm not sure if anyone has sent here a big thank you to all the police team for protecting us during these difficult, challenging times. And I'm not sure anybody has actually said that, but you have. So on behalf of everybody, thank you very, very much indeed. It really does make a difference to have people appreciate what our fantastic frontline and support staff do. Chief, I'm sure you'd like to acknowledge that as well.
Really appreciate those direct comments. I guess we've had an indirect thanks in that we conduct an independent survey, telephone survey that's been going on for probably 2 decades across the county that we do with the local authorities. And in that survey, we got a very high degree of confidence back from residents about how they thought the police had responded to the pandemic. So we've seen it in the survey results, but I'm really pleased to hear that direct feedback too. So thanks very much. The teams will definitely appreciate that.
That's great, but we can always do better, of course. Now, to what extent is Brexit impacting on international policing issues, such as flushing out scams operated from overseas? Chief, that's obviously one for you, yeah.
But I'm very pleased to say that the practical implications of the EU exit deal have worked out pretty well for policing and in the whole. We had a number of concerns running into it about loss of access to certain systems and things being slowed down. But by and large, it's a pretty good deal for law enforcement. We have very good relationships overseas. There's 1 or 2 systems changes about exchange of information, particularly in relation to wanted people, where we're using Interpol and international systems now rather than the European ones. But on a practical day-to-day basis, residents in Surrey shouldn't see too much difference. There's a bit of back office work that we need to do differently, but it's pretty good. So specifically about flushing out overseas scams, I mentioned one earlier. Those types of joint international policing operation are not hindered in any way by the deal. So really pleased to report that.
Well, that's a very a positive message. Thank you for that. Now, there's a group on WhatsApp which is buzzing with the reports of vans and pickup trucks entering farmyards, ostensibly to have a look round, and there's something dodgy with their number plates. How are farmers and other rural dwellers able? How can they help? And how are these vans able to drive around so easily? Chief, I think this has to be you again, or Karen. Perhaps you've got something specific.
I can say a little bit about the sort of false place issue. So that would get picked up by our ANPR cameras that are in cars and at static points. So it would come up in the car that the plate was, the driver would see that it's not that type of vehicle following it along, but report them to us as well. Karen, I don't know if you're aware of this particular WhatsApp group from the Rural Crime Committee.
Not personally, but hopefully the team are, and again, I'll check they know about it.
Okay, thank you. Now, I represent the Grange, that's a care home, I guess, at Bookham. We support adults with learning disabilities. We have a great relationship with our PSCO, Police Community Support Officer. Thank you for that. But surprised at how poor your communications are in terms of including this vulnerable group in consultations. Can we work with you to improve this? Well, because I'm sorry to hear that. It's certainly not by design. I know that we try to include every single resident in Surrey. I'd like personally to take this up. Thank you for the Grange. Are we missing a trick here? Well, you're the best people to tell us, you and other people in your position. So we'll get in touch. And thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Now, I don't actually have any more questions. I'm just... Yes, I have. Bear with me. All right. A question specifically for Karen. What are your major frustrations working in the Mole Valley area? And could you say what are your major things you like doing in Mole Valley? Let's have some balance here.
Ooh. Frustrations. Actually can't think of anything off the top of my head, really. I suppose it's when you get a certain type of crime that still keeps recurring. But these days we've got a better problem solving model. The team have got help from headquarters. We've got a central problem solving team as well. So that sort of frustration is just part of the job, really, and that keep trying to solve it. And I suppose the positive side is when you see a good result, when you see the happy stories like the cuckooing victims that are now being supported and protected. So those are the nice side of things.
Great. Thank you for the question. Now, this will have to be the last question, I'm afraid, as we're run out of time. From Neighbourhood Watch in MSA Mole Valley. I don't immediately identify what MSA is, but somebody will tell me. Can I request that we have this type of interaction more frequently, as they are so very helpful? Well, they do cost a bit to put on, so we can't be doing them every week. But yes, I'm keen to consult and engage with the residents as often as possible, and we'll see what we can do. And do, of course, feel free, anyone, to get in touch with me, the local force, or Surrey Police. We need your thoughts and your input to make our residents even safer. I'm going to call a halt there to say once again, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. And I see there's a few more thank yous coming, so thank you for that. Thanks to the team, the Chief Constable and the Borough Commander. Especially, Karen, could I wish you and your team, hard-working team, the very best of luck in Mole Valley. You're doing a great job, I think, as has been proved, but there's always more to do. So, cheerio, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Good evening.